keeping you up to speed on all your Colorado teams. It's time for Coffee Break.
Oh, the NFL world is buzzing this morning, and the AFC West may quickly be becoming a powerhouse division in the National Football League. And Will Petersen, if you're a football lifer and football never sleeps, why should you, right? I guess that's got to be what 73-year-old Pete Carroll is thinking as he now comes out of retirement to become the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, Richie, it's fascinating because there's a lot to it. First of all, Sean Payton is now the youngest head coach in the AFC West. He's 6 days younger than Jim Harbaugh. So that's number one. 61-year-old Sean
the
Payton,
spring chicken,
leading the Broncos as the youngest coach in the AFC West. And then two, and this is going to be, I think, what everyone's going to talk about up until March when Russell Wilson is a free agent. There are already reports that Russ and Pete have reconciled. The relationship has been mended, smoothed over. We all know the Raiders need a quarterback. We all know Russ probably needs a home after the Steelers likely going to move on. Remember, the Broncos are still on the hook for money, but Russ is a free agent this offseason. Can you imagine Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson in the AFC West playing the Denver Broncos twice a year? Quite a development when we got all that news this morning that Pete is headed to the desert.
Yeah, I believe it was Jeff Howe from The Athletic that was mentioning those reports that you're referencing in terms of don't be surprised. There it is. You see it on the screen with Pete Carroll taking over the Las Vegas Raiders. One name that I've heard to watch at quarterback is the very familiar face here in Denver, Russell Wilson. They've mended fences per source, and Wilson could be a stopgap while the Raiders develop a long-term answer. But let's not forget, Will, that while fences may be mended per source, Russell Wilson in the not so distant past definitely tried to get Pete Carroll fired.
He did.
Going upstairs to the front office in Seattle and saying it's him or me, basically the ultimate ultimatum. And Russ ultimately lost that ultimatum as he was the one jettisoned at the end of the day, not that long after, not Pete Carroll. So I don't know how well you can, all fences can be mended, I suppose, but that feels like a pretty significant fence to kick down.
Okay, I get it, but here's the thing. Being a starting NFL quarterback is a game of musical chairs, Richie. Name me how many cities Russell Wilson can realistically start in next year. I think you would mend the fences pretty quickly, too, if you're Russ and looking around and going, there ain't that many jobs open. Remember, we kind of went through this last year of like, well, we guess he could start in Pittsburgh. Maybe he could start in Atlanta. Then the Falcons swoop up Cousins. The Steelers bring in Russ and then immediately get Justin Fields. And that turned into a whole saga. But without going through team by team, there are not many that are going to be hunting for a quarterback this offseason that also aren't in a position to draft one, a la the Titans, the Browns, etc. The Raiders pick at 6. They could either trade up for Shedeur or Cam Ward, or they could sign a veteran like Russell Wilson.
Oh, there's no doubt. Desperation spurs action. And
exactly.
It influences decisions that would not normally be made under normal general circumstances. So I have no doubt that even if the fence wasn't totally mended, Russell Wilson's kind of stark decline at the end of this season from Pittsburgh, that where at one point they were as hot as any team in the AFC and they were on top of the world after making the change from Fields to Wilson, completely falling off the wagon and then sputtering out shortly after. If I'm Russell Wilson, I know there's a genuine chance I'm not in Pittsburgh next season, nor is Justin Fields, and I've got to find somewhere that wants me more than maybe him again. So I can see it, and also I'm okay with it because, one, what cinema that would be if Russell Wilson comes to Las Vegas, which, by the way, let's not forget, when Russ was leaving Seattle, Las Vegas and the Raiders was one of the destinations on his no-trade clause list. It was like Chicago, Las Vegas. Denver wasn't on that list, but there was a couple other teams that were. So Russ has already openly expressed interest in being in Las Vegas even before he came to Denver. Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson obviously have history. They won a Super Bowl together. And Tom Brady, who seems to be pulling a lot of the strings by bringing in a guy like Pete Carroll, is going to give Pete the opportunity to pick, because when you bring in a guy like Pete Carroll, that's a cultural reset. It's the same vein of why the Broncos brought in Sean Payton, why the Chargers brought in Jim Harbaugh. I don't think it's why the Chiefs brought in Andy Reid. I don't know that they needed it quite to the degree that those two teams I mentioned previously did. But Pete Carroll is head honcho in town now. You're bringing him out of retirement. He only comes out of retirement for that circumstance. And so if Pete thinks fences are mending and is open to it, this really could be a thing where we see Russell Wilson back in the AFC West.
Yeah, and coming to Denver at least once a year, would play the Broncos in Vegas once a year. It would be fascinating. And then the other layer to this, of course, is now that Pete Carroll's in the AFC West, what is the hierarchy of coaches? I've already seen some chatter. Is Sean Payton the worst head coach in the AFC West? And maybe that's not a knock on Sean as much as it is the division is just that strong. But if you had to power rank these guys 1 through 4, I think it'd be universally agreed Andy Reid's at 1. And then after that, who do you slot in 2, 3, 4? Another interesting dynamic that Sean Payton's a great coach, but he may be the worst coach in his own division.
Well, you know me. If there's one thing, there's one is I got a lot to say, but if there's a second, it's that I always come prepared with visual aids. So I was prepared for this. Let's look at now the 4 AFC West coaches. You have Andy Reid, the aforementioned, probably number 1 agreed coach in the division, Jim Harbaugh, and then Sean Payton and Pete Carroll for the Broncos and Raiders. But the combined accomplishments of those coaches is staggering. If you look at it, 20 conference championship appearances, 9 Super Bowl appearances with 5 Super Bowl wins, 668 combined wins in the NFL among those 4 coaches. That's good for a 635 combined win percentage. You said Sean Payton may be the worst coach in his own division and all that. I'm here to tell you that there is one coach among those 4 that is the guy in the group project that does the least amount of work but gets the same amount of credit. It is not Sean Payton.
Okay, I want to hear
it
who.
Is Jim Harbaugh.
Whoa!
It is unequivocally Jim Harbaugh, who, if you just look at Jim Harbaugh's solo contributions there, he does have 3 conference championship appearances, but no Super Bowl wins. Every other coach in the conference has a Super Bowl win, at least one. 55 total wins at the NFL level. That is less than half by a good margin, significantly less than half of the total NFL wins of the other coaches in the division when you look at them individually. So is Sean Payton the worst coach in his division? Not by my watch. No chance. It's Jim Harbaugh. Okay. The numbers show it.
Well, Jim Harbaugh beat Sean Payton twice last year. Let's start there.
Right. One year doesn't erase the previous 26.
Okay. Hold on. Let's start there. He went 2-0.
Yeah.
Jim Harbaugh has won a championship in major football in the last 2 years.
Is it the most major of football, or?
I said major football. A national title at a college is a big deal. And
if we're talking about college football.
When's the last time Sean Payton hoisted a trophy? 2009.
When was the last time Jim Harbaugh hosted one?
2023.
In the NFL?
No.
Well, that's what we're talking about.
Okay,
Will.
I didn't tell you he won a Pee Wee trophy.
I mean, I'm just saying. It's the NFL.
Okay, says the Spartan. He won a national championship. That is true. If
there's one thing I'm never going to do, it's give Jim Harbaugh credit.
At Michigan.
But I feel like this is a winning argument regardless.
He beat Sean Payton twice this year. And, let's not forget, who did Greg Penner want to be the next head coach of the Denver Broncos? Jim Harbaugh. He desperately flew to Ann Arbor to try to get him.
Sean Payton saved Greg Penner from himself.
Well, I think the owner of the Broncos may agree with my list more than your list and put Jim Harbaugh ahead of Sean Payton.
Okay, here's an interesting one because you just I'll go down your rabbit hole.
Are we agreeing Pete is 2 then? What's your list? What's your list? 1 through 4.
Yeah, no, I think that I would go Andy Reid. If you're just looking at like
power rank the division.
Yeah, if you're looking at who's got the biggest stick to carry around in the AFC West, Andy Reid is number 1.
Clearly.
It's not even close in that regard. I think Pete Carroll would be number 2 because he has a lot of similar in terms of championships won, but he's been to more and more recently. And then it would be Sean Payton and Jim Harbaugh would be last. I mean, it is hard to say that you are a better coach than a Super Bowl winning head coach who's won 3 times as many games as you in the NFL over a more significant length of time and is now doing it at multiple stops. I know Jim Harbaugh.
Jim's won everywhere he's won, and you're punishing Jim.
He's won 55 games in the NFL.
Right,
so when he's won everywhere he's won, I mean, what's the sample size?
You're punishing Jim for spending a lot of his time in college, right? Like Jim would
I'm punishing his NFL credentials because I'm not giving him credit at the NFL level for things he did in college. I think that's fair.
Okay. Do you think it was Jim Harbaugh's fault that the Superdome blacked out in the Super Bowl in 2012?
That's why they lost the game?
That changed the entire game. They had a massive lead, Niners over Ravens, and Ravens stormed back and stole it.
But you think he's not able to make adjustments to that because of a power outage
that lasted 9 minutes? I would love to live in an alternate universe where the lights stay on. That's all I'm saying. I think the Niners probably win that Super Bowl. And again, you're punishing Jim for the fact that he won at Stanford and he won at Michigan. Like, he would have double the NFL wins if he had wanted to spend his time in the NFL. He wanted to spend his time in college.
Great, and that's great for him, but he just doesn't also get the NFL credit for what he would have done if he did do those things when he didn't.
Well, you want to hear my list? Because it's going to tick you off.
Yeah, go. If you put him number one.
No, I'm not putting him one. Andy Reid's one. Are you
going to put him two?
Jim Harbaugh's two, Pete Carroll's three, Sean Payton's four. That's my list.
Oh, my God. That is just... You know what? It's fitting that you are going to give Jim Harbaugh all this undue credit that he has not earned, that we're all giving it based off of theory and potential and what could have been and would have been or should have been, but it wasn't, because that's exactly the way the NFL world treats Jim Harbaugh's quarterback in Justin Herbert, who's this top 5 generational talent that hasn't won anything. And in the postseason, suddenly becomes the quarterback that's the exact opposite of what he is in the regular season. So it's fitting that your description of Jim Harbaugh matches Justin Herbert, because maybe in that way, they really are a match made in heaven.
Okay. All right. I just, we have very different philosophical views on Jim Harbaugh. I get it. And adding Pete Carroll to this division just makes a really tough coaching division that much tougher. And guess what? I hope Sean Payton makes me eat crow. I hope he goes and wins 12 or 13 games next year.
I hope so.
Is right near the top of the AFC West. And we can sit here and say, well, Andy Reid's probably still won because he may get yet another ring this year, but Sean is clearly two. And Sean could do that next year with a great year. And all of a sudden you look up and the Chargers are 9-8 and the Raiders are 7-10. And it's like, yeah, Sean is the second best coach.
I will tell you this, that and this is not, I already had my nice little fun jabs at Jim Harbaugh, although I think they're rooted in truth. And I want that on the record. I think that this hire genuinely makes the AFC West one of the preeminent and toughest divisions in the NFL right now.
Yeah, and it may have already been, but it already was with a bottom feeder, right?
Right.
So what
with
you're
the
saying
weak link
is, it was pretty good. You had 3 playoff teams, obviously, but then you have the Raiders. Now, if Pete Carroll can get the Raiders competitive, I mean, I don't think it's any question. It's at least the second best division in the NFL.
When you look at the statistics that I put together there in terms of like the combined win percentages of all those teams and whatever, I don't think you're going to find another division in the NFL that's got that kind of representation.
Not for head coaching.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say that we have to be careful on just declaring it the best in the NFL, the NFC East has 2 teams in the conference championship this weekend. The Cowboys, most people think, are too talented to lose that many games. If you just
go by regular season stats, the NFC North was freaking unbelievable.
And the NFC North was awesome too.
Yeah. But I just mean in terms of head coaches.
Head coaches, it's one.
Yeah.
Clearly one.
Yeah.
Clearly
that's where I'm going with that. So I don't know, Will, and I think that it'll be curious to see where they go at quarterback, because is it Russell Wilson? Is it somebody like Shedeur Sanders? How does this move impact the inevitable Deion Sanders circus that's going to be hovering over the NFL draft this year as it relates to where his son could go? I don't know, but I know that Tom Brady is somebody who's got a lot of swing, and now you've got Pete Carroll as somebody who is a culture foundational element kind of builder of a franchise. I think that we need to, when you've got the minds of Tom Brady, Pete Carroll, and now a potential quarterback or whoever they decide to go with there, you've got a lot of minds there that the Raiders of old that we've seen, and this is a team that beat the Broncos 8 out of the last 10 times.
Yep.
They could be kind of jumping back just as quickly as we've kind of seen the Broncos come back to life after almost a decade of mediocrity or less.
Oh, for sure. They didn't hire Pete Carroll to quote unquote rebuild for the next 4 years. They hired Pete Carroll. They want to fix this thing now. And you mentioned Shedeur Sanders. Don't forget who is super close with Shedeur Sanders and the Sanders family. It is Tom Brady. So there could be something that Pete Carroll put pen to paper this morning, and there was sort of a nod, wink, wink handshake. Shedeur Sanders will be the next quarterback here, and the Russell Wilson thing is more of a smokescreen. Again, the Raiders pick at 6. It's not impossible to get from 6-2, 6-3 in the NFL draft. I'll be fascinated to see if Brady pulls those strings as well. And again, we spent the first 10 minutes of the show talking about Russ. Maybe it's Shedeur all along. There will be Colorado ties, though, right? Because if it's Russ or if it's Shedeur, there's going to be a lot of people in this part of the country that are super interested in the next quarterback of the Raiders.
It's pure cinema. I love it. Yep. I can't wait. And Russell Wilson is Godzilla. He destroys cities. So if that means bring him to Las Vegas and watch him help that city that you think is going to have so much hope and life, just like we thought in Denver, and it didn't turn out that way, just to watch it crumble in the city of sin, sign me up.
And it's just not a very talented roster. That's the other thing. Like raise all boats.
Right. You got Max Crosby, you got Brock Bowers, and then you got
who?
Exactly.
Those are, like, every time we previewed a Raiders game this year, those were the two guys we talked about. Maybe Devontae Adams early on, but he's obviously gone now. It's just not a talented roster. And guess what? Russell Wilson at 26, 27, could he raise all boats? Sure. Russell Wilson in his mid to late 30s? Absolutely not. I'm with you. It would implode and they would go 6-11. It'd be funny to watch.
Right. Another man who is very familiar with raising all boats would be Nikola Jokic, who last night had one of the most incredible games that I have witnessed and that a lot of us may witness for a long time. The Nuggets topped the Sacramento Kings. It only ended up being a 9-point game in the end, and it was as close as 5 in the final minutes. But there was a time where they were up 15 plus points, 20 points in that game. And Nikola Jokic, I think that you and I had the conversation about MVP, and I said, and I still kind of believe, I had this weird feeling that I just think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, SGA, is going to win the MVP award this year, even though Nikola Jokic is having a better season than any of the 3 previous seasons where he did win MVP.
Yep.
And when the 3 seasons that he won MVP were 3 of the best statistical seasons of all time in NBA history. So when you say things like that, it's hard to wrap your head around. But we live in a world, unfortunately, where the most valuable player across a lot of sports, but in basketball for this conversation, is not always given to the best player in the league or the most deserving player. It kind of has this weird subjectivity to it. But I hope that Nikola makes me eat my words in saying that I think it's just, you can call it now, SGA is going to win it. And I know that sentiment is echoed. But the guy has a 35-22-17 game. Did I get that right?
Yes.
35, 22, and 17.
You did.
He is the first player to accomplish all 3 of those, a 35-20-15 game, since Wilt Chamberlain in 1968. He's the first player to record 35 points, 22 rebounds, and 17 points individually in a single season. So just to make sure that we're clear on that.
And he did that in one game.
Yes. He is the first player ever, individual player, to have a game where he scored 35 points, a game where he scored he recorded 22 rebounds, and a game where he recorded 17 assists. He did it all in a single game.
Insane.
No other individual NBA player has ever done that over the course of a single season. I mean, the Jeff Van Gundy said it best the other night against the 76ers.
Stan Van Gundy.
Stan Van Gundy. Sorry, did I say Jeff?
Yep.
Stan Van Gundy. He said NBA basketball is really, really hard. Like, it is. And I think that we as fans are kind of desensitized to that. Like, you don't really see it. Just like you don't really see and appreciate how big NBA players are and how physically rare these guys are as specimens until you are courtside, or you stand next to one, or you pass by one, like you and I have the opportunity to do as we cover these teams. It's jarring. Like, the first time I stood next to Dwight Howard, I genuinely couldn't believe that he and I are the same species.
Yeah.
Like, there's just something wrong there with me. And
you're pretty average size.
Yeah,
I think Dwight's the outlier.
Not next to those guys.
Yeah.
But anyways, Nikola Jokic makes NBA basketball that is really, really extremely hard just look way too easy. And I just think that, we say it, I've said it a million times, that he has normalized greatness, right, in a way. But I think that's actually so insane, because at the rate that he's done it, he's continued to almost devalue or normalize it to where it's like we've almost locally and nationally become bored with how good he really is. And it's crazy to me that he hasn't won MVP almost every year that he's been in the league, really, after he's come on. And I'd say since maybe 2017, 2018, when he really started to pick it up, because there's not a better basketball player on the planet.
No, there's not. And what Nikola Jokic did last night was ridiculous. As I told Jake Shapiro, it feels like once a month he does something that not since Wilt, right? Not since Wilt. But when that stat that you brought up, that it's only been done twice in NBA history, one time last night and the other time 1968, Wilt Chamberlain. 1968, everyone. We're talking what? 10 presidents ago?
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane. There's more people on Earth that weren't alive in 68 than are. Like, what percentage of the population on Earth was alive in 1968? 20%? I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's not a very high number. 1968 was a long time ago, and he did it last night. I don't know if we're bored. You said we're bored. I think we're almost content, right? Like nothing can shock us anymore. So I don't think it's boredom necessarily. I think it's whatever this guy does, I believe it. And the ultimate example last night, Richie, was the shot at the end of the third quarter. I mean, the shot at the end of the third quarter is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. Jake Shapiro's doing a lot of research on this. It's clearly a top 10 longest shot in NBA history, if not top 5. They said 66 feet, but you look at it.
I love that that Jake has done this, by the way, because I agree.
LeBron James made a shot from an identical spot about 15 years ago, and they said it was 75 feet.
Right.
So we're starting to bring in angles and math and this and that. But what he did at the end of the third quarter to just fling the basketball the entire length of the court, and it drops in, and he has almost no reaction. For a guy that's had a ton of highlights in his career, that's instantly in the top 5 for me. That was ridiculous.
Will, he threw it like a Nerf ball.
Yes.
He threw it with one hand off an inbound pass. And you're right. By the way, I was stunned by the discrepancy when I saw Jake Shapiro bringing up the LeBron James thing, and you can see the screenshots of where they're standing on the court. And one is 66 and the other is 75. It's like, how are you off by 9 feet?
Yeah, what is this, baseball measuring home runs?
9 feet is crazy.
Yeah.
That's a huge plus minus. So I fully expect this to go out longer. It's the longest shot, regardless of what the number is. I believe it would still be the longest shot of Jokic's career.
They may be adjusting it this morning, by the way, but I think when it's all said and done, it's going to be a top 5 longest shot in NBA history.
And the ease and the effortlessness with which he did it. Will, if you gave me 100 tries, I'm not even sure that I would hit the rim on 10% of the shot.
We don't have the arm strength.
I don't think I could physically get the ball that far. No. Definitely not with one
hand. Because even like a half court shot, when you're messing around with your buddies
the running,
at the gym, running start, and you launch it. He was like another 20 feet behind and did it one. Richie, I could give you 20,000 tries and you just couldn't physically get the ball there. That's not a knock on you. That's 99.9.
I can promise you I wouldn't make it.
No, and 99% of humans, you can't get it there. Like the physics just doesn't add up to palm a basketball, roll your arm back, and throw it 75 feet in the air. It's just not going to happen. Not only does he do it, he makes it. Just the cherry on top of an incredible night in which he got his 5th straight triple-double before the end of the third quarter.
0 minutes in the fourth quarter, and he's had 5 straight triple-doubles. Again,
he did have to come back in last night because the Kings made it a little close.
Yeah, no, I meant, I guess statistically he didn't need any minutes in the fourth quarter to accomplish that triple-double.
But the other ones, he just got to chill on the bench. That one, he did have to come back in and make sure they won the game.
No, and I think that that's another area where I feel like, and maybe I'll use your word, have become content where we shouldn't. And I think we need to constantly shake ourselves to stop that, because a triple double in the NBA, any other player in the NBA gets a triple double.
It's a big freaking deal.
A freaking massive deal.
Yeah.
A player gets a triple double. A player not named Nikola Jokic gets a triple double in 3 quarters, and it's, oh my God, this guy is we're gonna have to print this stat sheet out and frame it for this guy, because of how amazing this performance was. Jokic has done it 5 times in the last 5 games.
I'm with you. Sometimes when you're in the moment, you need to pinch yourself and say, I need to appreciate this moment, right? And as Nuggets fans, we need to pinch ourselves on a nightly basis that a late January game against the Sacramento Kings had what it had last night, right? Like, we need to I hear everyone say, well, I can't wait till the playoffs. I just care about the playoffs. I just care about the playoffs. This guy is so good and so special, everyone, that he can do that in January against the Kings, that it can make a slog of an 82 regular season feel like, oh my goodness, this is a big deal. That's what Jokic can do any given night. He did it last night against the Kings for about 37 different reasons, the shot included.
And I took a shot at Jim Harbaugh, which I will always take the opportunity to do liberally because I believe in it. Another player or personality that I will continue to do that with when I feel the opportunity to do so is Joel Embiid. And just do you know how insane it is that we're not already talking about Nikola Jokic as the MV4 going for MV5 situation, and he's the 4-time reigning MVP? Joel Embiid has played 52 games since he won the MVP in 2023.
That's nuts.
Nikola Jokic is almost, we're talking within single-digit margins of having as many triple-doubles as Embiid has games played since Embiid won the MVP.
Wow.
It's like 44, 45 and counting. and Embiid has played 52 total games.
And don't forget, he dragged Team Serbia to a bronze medal in that time as well and came this close to upsetting the U.S. in the Olympics.
Did you see that the Netflix dropping that documentary
teaser
that coming out?
Should be fun.
That is going to be awesome. And I can't wait. I was just talking about this with Drew Spivak out in the hall. I can't wait to see how they portray the tension between Serbia and U.S. that was leading up to that, because there was a large contingency of people here in the United States, especially here in Colorado, that were okay and maybe even rooting for Serbia to beat Team USA in the Olympics. One, because a lot of people would consider this most recent iteration of Team USA, last year's team, one of the least likable Team USAs in a long time because of the characters that were there, but also the great story that's Nikola Jokic, how much he's beloved by fans here in Denver, and how he played Team USA, the greatest collection of basketball players on the planet. He played Team USA to an even, I think it was 82-82 when he was on the court, and it was just the drastic difference when he was off the court, the rare time that it was, that cost Team Serbia the game. I can't wait to see how they portray that dynamic.
Yeah, it'd be fascinating to watch, no doubt about it. And you're right, people were torn, country versus Jokic, and it was fascinating to watch over the summer. I can't wait to check out the doc.
Real quick on the way out, while we got a couple minutes left here, I wanted to talk to you, as I always do, about the Colorado Avalanche, because I think we're still in this ongoing saga, as we're going to continue to be, that has to do with the Mikko Rantanen contract situation. The trade deadline is still looming. The Avs are sputtering a little bit, which has more to do with the absence of Valeri Nichushkin than anything else. For once, we're not complaining about the goaltending, and it's, wow, can we get some help for our goaltender in Mackenzie Blackwood? But I think that we got a little nugget in the last week or so, that a change within the NHL could potentially be advantageous to the Colorado Avalanche as it relates to trying to keep Mikko Rantanen. And that is that we already knew and were told that the NHL salary cap was expected to go up somewhere in the range of like $92 million. It's sitting around 88, 89 right now. So you're going to get like a $2 or $3 million bump right there. If it goes as high as $96 million, as Frank Zaravalli has reported, is that enough money, enough added money to the team's salary cap that you could see a much more realistic situation that the Avs are able to find a way to pay Mikko Rantanen an amount that is satisfactory in order to keep him without upsetting an apple cart from a contract standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully that's the goal. And this salary cap news is definitely good news for the Avalanche overall. But I still don't think, even with a larger salary cap, we can dodge the elephant in the room, which is the Avs don't want to pay Mikko Rantanen more than Nathan MacKinnon. MacKinnon makes $12.6 million. If you're looking for someone to blame Leon Draisaitl. Blame the Oilers, because he's the one who's the second best player in Edmonton and signed for $14 million a year. Mikko's camp is not budging off that number, saying, hey, he's their second best player. He got 14. Mikko's our second best player. Debatable with Kale. We want 14. And the Avs are saying, nope, Nathan makes 12.6. We'll give you 12.5. So salary cap going up or not, Richie, the symbolic nature is the Avs want to give him 12.5 a year. He wants 14 a year. They're 1.5 apart.
And there's just no way.
Is 1.5 apart enough for a divorce? Maybe.
My final question would be, and there's just no way, because we see this happen in other sports too, and I'm just not as familiar at it with the hockey side of things. There's no way that the Avs could use some of that added cap space to give Mikko what he wants and restructure Nathan MacKinnon's contract to give him a bump on the remaining years. Does that not happen in the NHL like we see in other sports?
That would be very, very rare. When these guys sign, they are locked in. You rarely see them do. Now, the product of that is the hard cap, right? And the product is, we always joke in the NFL, the salary cap's a myth. There's not in the NHL. So maybe you're right. Maybe that's a trend-setting thing. Whoa, Nathan MacKinnon redid his deal and lays the groundwork moving forward that, hey, with this new cap, that's the new norm in the NHL. But yes, I can sit here and tell you today, that is not common in the NHL. Once guys sign, that's what they play for till the thing expires.
Fair enough. Well, something we're going to be keeping our eyes on. I thought maybe I was going to be able to bring Will something that would turn into a hope, of nugget of optimism around the opportunity of keeping Mikko Rantanen, which they may do, but it sounds like maybe more things are going to be needed to happen in order for that to be the case. Well, Will, thank you so much.
Thanks, Richie,
for chopping it up with me, and we will see the rest of you on Monday, where I'm sure the news cycle will be filled with all great new things here in the city of Denver. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.